Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am your chakra coach. On this podcast, we'll be exploring how the chakra system can help guide you to grow your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual wellness, leading you closer to your highest self. Hello, my fellow chakra explorers. How are things? How's the healing going? Are you able to take some time for yourself? So often I hear people say that they're fine, they don't need healing, that their lives are good, and that someone else has had it so much worse than they have. So why should they spend any time healing or recovering from trauma? And I get that because I have that voice in my head sometimes too. Maybe we all do. I don't know, some of the time, but I would encourage you to avoid comparative suffering. That's the tendency to think we don't need or deserve care because we can imagine that someone else is suffering more. But by diminishing our trauma, however small, we delay our healing. We delay our journey towards wholeness, towards authenticity, towards our highest, truest self. We all have trauma simply from living in a world that is not perfect, that has injustice, that works to cover up our capital S self. I I frequently wonder how it all started. Like if we all have trauma, the kind that is society covering our authentic self up, who started it? Who covered us up the first time? I don't know if that even makes sense, but if we're all living like that, why can't we why can't we just collectively stop? I have no answers. I just questions. But I do know it exists, so we have to address it in ourselves and in our culture. We need to spend time healing ourselves, if for no other reason than that we don't want to contribute to additional harm in the world. I'm really using the beginning of this year to explore trauma and healing and what that means and what it looks like for me. I hope this series is helping you to do the same if that's something you're interested in. I do want to give a special welcome to new listeners. I've spoken to a few people this week who are just joining our little community here, and I am so happy that you have. I do think that all of this is a little easier. All of this healing is a little easier when we do it together. I say that a lot. I say that a lot because I mean it a lot. Anyway, today will be the last in the healing series based on Dr. Gabor Mate's book, The Myth of Normal, and his 4 A's of healing. However, I have a couple interviews lined up for you with people who use other modalities for their personal healing and then share them with others. There are a huge range of possibilities for this journey, so I wanted to bring you several of them. So today, the last A of healing is acceptance. And it feels like if I could just get this one down, the others would fall right into place. Although, as you may recall me mentioning, it isn't like they're steps in a linear path, nor are they ever really complete or like checked off the healing to-do list. But to me, and we'll get into it here in a minute, I just feel like acceptance makes space for the other A's: authenticity, agency, and anger. Acceptance is really just acknowledging what is right now, in this moment, in the present, being fully open to the truth of now, not trying to deny any part of it or our feelings about it or wishing it were some other way, being really present with what is. Acceptance. Accepting that right now we might not be living in our authentic space, that we might not have agency, that we do have anger, not pretending that something is or isn't happening. We simply can't heal from trauma until we have a really good relationship with the truth of what is right now. This this is a heart chakra quality. It might not surprise you to learn. The heart chakra lies right in the middle of our vertical energy line, and it is also the energetic conduit to the world. Finding balance here comes in large part from not hiding ourselves from the world or the world from ourselves. Acceptance is a great way to sit with emotions. Just sitting and feeling whatever it is and just saying to yourself, it's true. I do feel sad or mad or joy or embarrassed or loving or nervous or excited. I do feel that in response to whatever I'm thinking or experiencing. Not not thinking I feel jealous of my friend who just got a promotion and I know I shouldn't feel jealous so I'm a bad friend. Just being accepting of the human experience you're having in that moment, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do, I think. We tend to have a lot of opinions about ourselves, what we should and shouldn't do and think and feel. So we try to regulate everything so tightly without ever really accepting the truth of the moment. We talked last week about repressing anger, and that would fall right into this, not accepting the fact that we feel the very normal human emotion of anger sometimes. Dr. Mate uses acceptance in this very broad sense that I'm describing, but I know a lot of us have trouble fully accepting ourselves. And this is a good practice to use on that journey as well. Allowing ourselves to be exactly as we are right in the moment, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever. Just making a little room in our hearts and heart chakra for that acceptance. The funny thing is, it's the truth of the moment, whether we fight it or not. So if we fight it, we're just causing ourselves more suffering. And once we accept what is, and I also think accept what was, we'll start to find a little more peace, which is healing. Accepting the past doesn't mean thinking it was great or that it was appropriate or good or anything like that if it wasn't. That wouldn't be truthful. And since that's what we're always trying to find in the heart chakra, denying the pain would be even more unbalancing. Sometimes we can think that our childhoods shouldn't have been one way, or that our parents should have been different, or that we should have had a better school experience. And maybe what we had is not what we would choose for ourselves or for anyone for that matter. But the step of acceptance in healing is knowing that it was the way it was, and it will never not be that way. We tend to spend a lot of time fighting the past. And I'll tell you, the past will win every time. What we can do is accept the truth of it and go from there. The same holds true for the present moment when we realize that we're not in a situation that is healthy or safe. Yes, of course, everyone's homes should be safe, but sometimes they're not. And our responsibility in healing is not to accept the situation and then just live in it. It's to accept the situation, acknowledge the truth of the situation, and then make choices with our agency that are authentic to determine what we want to do or be next. There's a beautiful concept in the myth of normal that acceptance is not tolerance. We don't have to see the truth and then just put up with it in the present. The healing process is either to change ourselves to live in the circumstance or change the circumstance. You do not have to stay in an abusive relationship or even one that simply isn't fulfilling you because acceptance is healing. Acceptance is acknowledging the truth and opening the space for growth or change or whatever you knowingly and willingly decide to do. Just like we can accept that there are terrible things happening in the world, but we don't have to tolerate them just because we accept that they are. That's why so much of the work in the social justice space is simply educating people that the problem exists because we have so much trauma around it that we don't even want to see it. But there is no healing without first acknowledging and accepting that there is a problem. On a personal level, this is how we can find self love, self acceptance, and self compassion, and still see the opportunity to be different than we are now. The heart chakra doesn't ask us to remain stagnant. Stagnation in an energy system that's supposed to be full of flow and movement is trauma in and of itself. The heart chakra, when it's balanced, simply allows us to be in the present moment with whatever is happening. I know I keep saying this, but it really is true. There's so much talk of mindfulness and being present, and I think we lose sight of what that really means. And this is it: an open and honest relationship with what is. Even if we're paying attention to what's happening, if we're running a narrative in our heads that it should be different or that it shouldn't be happening, we're denying the moment. It's so tricky, right? Because we also want to acknowledge and accept and be present with what we're feeling, which might be anger or disappointment at the moment. I'll be totally honest with you. I don't think that the human experience allows the vast majority of us to ever truly escape from this. But the idea of healing, I suppose, is that we make an effort. And like I always say, just being aware that we're doing it and then accepting that. None of this is easy. Of course, if healing was easy, then everyone would do it and we wouldn't have nearly as many problems as we do. An exercise I love to do with clients that connects the heart and the root chakra is saying to yourself, in this moment, I am safe. Or in this moment, I am okay. Or loved, or anything that you're working on. It's a grounding exercise, but it's a grounding exercise that comes from the heart chakra. You may have heard me say before that we have to find ways to be grounded and centered in ourselves. That's how we can develop the trust to go out in the world, to accept the world, because we know that the safety is in us, not coming from the outside. And I share this because I think it's a good example of how these healing steps go together. I do it with the chakras, but you could maybe do it with the A's. In this moment, I accept my authenticity. I accept the version of myself that exists right now. That's self acceptance, self love. And it doesn't mean that you can't be different in the future or that you weren't different in the past. In fact, you were different and you will be different at every moment. This is the primary work I do with my chakra balancing for weight loss clients in the beginning. In this moment, I accept exactly who I am. I suppose it's a little healing process of its own. And obviously, it doesn't have to be weight loss, it can be anything at all. But if you struggle with acceptance, try this exercise. Just sit for a moment and know that in that moment, in that space, right now, you are okay. Okay can be physically safe, it can be emotionally agile. I can share with you something that happened to me while I was preparing this episode. I had a day where I just felt off and I kept telling myself, something's wrong. Something's wrong with me. I don't feel right. I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. And then I took my own advice, which is easier said than done, if you know what I mean. But I just held still for a minute. And yeah, I didn't feel right, but I could also sit with that discomfort because until I did, I couldn't change it. And in that moment, I was emotionally capable, uh, able to feel that discomfort, to put a name to it. And it didn't change. And I had to be okay with that in that moment. But instead of racing off to try to find a way to change how I was feeling, I let myself accept that I was feeling that way. It wasn't wallowing around in self-pity. In fact, it helped pull me away from that spiral because I was in fact okay. I was safe. I could hold still and find the wherewithal to know that I could trust and ground in myself. And you can do that too, even if you don't think you can. We can all at least practice it. And some days we'll have more success than others, but the more we practice acceptance, the more balanced our heart chakras will be, the easier it will be to come back to balance when we find ourselves out of it. So, this is one of those episodes where I'm afraid I talked in circles a little bit. I hope there were some useful pieces for you. Like I've said, I do this work right along with you because it doesn't stop. We don't just finish it up. So, we'll keep using these steps: authenticity, agency, anger, and acceptance. And the chakras that go with them are the way I choose to experience them. It's a lot of lower chakra work, which I find a lot of people want to do, but they actually, in reality, spend most of their time living in their upper chakras because it feels easier to think our way through things rather than feel or accept or explore or even to take action sometimes. So I encourage you to spend some time getting into your body in whatever way works for you. For me, it's a lot of yoga asana, but meditation can also do it, especially body scans. So I invite you to try several different methods of any and all healing processes until you find what works for you. I hope this framework from the 4 A's from Dr. Mate has helped a little and maybe given you a new way to imagine healing. As usual, remember to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Your Chakra Coach and check out the Patreon page for more content and to support the podcast. All of those links are in the show notes. I hope you have an amazing day. Be present in it and in yourself. And we'll talk again next week. Bye.